Hi, it's Catherine Frankie. It's June 10th, and as we're all watching the amazing protests in LA, San Francisco, New York, and other cities, and the Trump administration responding by federalizing the National Guard and now deploying the Marines to do civil law enforcement on U.S. territory, we have now shifted into what I would call the next stage of authoritarian governance. Often people say to me, thank you so much for your legal analysis, but what should we do? So here's something I think the protesters should do. I'll admit it's a little law professory, but I can't help myself. So in the United States, we have this concept of popular sovereignty. The U.S. was built on a concept of popular sovereignty, which is the notion that the power of the government ultimately resides in the people. They are elected by the people, they are responsible to the people, they are accountable to the people. And that also can mean that the people can interpret the law just as much as other legal institutions can, the courts, the government itself. And it's time that we started law checking, if you will, what the Trump administration is doing in these just horrible legal interpretations of the Constitution and the laws that limit the exercise of federal power. So with respect to the federalization of the National Guard, mobilizing over the California governor's objections and without his notice, the National Guard against his own citizens who were protesting, the law that relates to that is called 10 U.S. Code Section 12406. And that law says that the United States or any of its possessions, a horrible word, is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. So that's one. Two, or there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, then the president is able to federalize the National Guard to come to the aid of defending the United States against that rebellion or invasion. So no one thinks that what's going on the streets of LA is an invasion. Now, the legal definition of rebellion is an organized attempt to change the government or leader of a country, usually through violence. What they're doing, they may later want to rebel, but right now what they're doing is protesting a government policy, the immigration policy. That is not a rebellion. It's certainly not an invasion. It is the exercise of political rights, speech rights, rights to protest, protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. Trump has no authority whatsoever to federalize, mobilize the National Guard in California, to put down the protests on the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles. But Trump and the courts aren't the only ones who get to define what rebellion or invasion means. Governor Newsom certainly has filed a lawsuit, and he's made all sorts of very smart arguments in that lawsuit that a federal judge will entertain, and then, the slow wheels of justice will roll, and, we'll see what happens. But the people who are sovereign also get to interpret what the law means. And my recommendation, among the many things we're doing, is to start declaring in our protests our interpretation of the law, that protest is not rebellion, that protesting a government policy is precisely what the Constitution was designed to protect. And we can do so on our signs. So I've come up let's just acknowledge I'm not a great graphic designer. I have other wonderful talents, but that's not one of them. So I used a little program and I came up with a couple of signs. So here they are. Take them, make them better, make them more interesting, make them funnier, queer them. But it's time the people spoke to legal authorities with our interpretation of the law, that we are acting constitutionally, protesting government policy and doing so peacefully, while the government is who's acting illegally. And we should declare it specifically in our signage.